You spent 3 years teaching in the South Carolina public school system in Walterboro, South Carolina, the 843, about an hour from hometown of Beaufort, South Carolina. Speak on the challenges you experienced in that role in your ongoing fight to level the playing field when it comes to equitable education.
Yeah. So again, it started off early, as a teenager, a high schooler, speaking out and talking about issues of educational inequity in our state through my work as a member and later a leader within the local state NAACP. And it always bothered me that our state constitution only required that we provide every child in our state a minimally adequate education, minimally adequate. And I oftentimes say, who wants to hire a minimally adequate doctor, a minimally adequate lawyer, a minimally adequate teacher? And so why should our students only receive a minimally adequate education? And many folks have called a set of schools along the I-95 corridor. They've called it, and I put this in quotation marks, the quarter of shame, because the schools have historically been underfunded. But I don't really like that terminology because I think it sends the wrong message to the students and to that live there, and to the families that live in that community in regards to their educational outcomes. But one thing that I always taught my students while teaching in Colleton County and Walterboro, South Carolina, is that labels didn't matter. Your zip code didn't matter. What mattered was what you chose to do and how you chose to get there. So obviously there are going to be barriers and certain barriers that do exist. Let's not ignore that. But I think as a teacher, my goal was to, number one, provide a good quality education to all of my students. And I taught alongside amazing educators that went to work every day and that cared about the outcomes of their students, that cared about preparing their students for productive futures. But my goal as an educator was to, number one, make sure the kids got a good education. Number two, to also make sure that they believe that they could do and be anything that they put their minds to. And so in my classroom, when you walked into Mr. Garvin's classroom, there was, I was a science teacher. So obviously we were learning our science curriculum, but we were also learning, things like, we were doing, confidence building activities, or we were doing, things that really built up our students and that encouraged them. And like, for instance, like providing opportunities, to our students, whether it was, exposure to things that they hadn't been exposed to. When I got to college, when I arrived in Colleton County, there was not a 6th grade science field trip. There had never been one at the consolidated middle school where I worked. And one of my ideas, my first year of teaching was, hey, why not give these kids an opportunity to go to a place called Barrier Island down on Seabrook Island, St. Christopher's. Let's plan a field trip. And that idea actually came from my own experience as a 6th grader in Richland County. And when I was in 6th grade, I had the opportunity to go to Barrier Island. And that was an experience that I always remembered. So I said, hey, I was a 6th grader many years ago, and I remember this experience. So why not provide this opportunity for my kids here in Colleton County to have that same sort of opportunity? So my second year of teaching, first year I came up with the idea. My second year of teaching, I actually implemented it, second and third year. And that's what we did. We planned an annual field trip, every year for our 6th grade students to go to Barrier Island. And so providing opportunities such as that, was certainly a goal for me. And again, back to something I said earlier, I always want to leave any environment that I enter better than I found it. And so for me now, 6, 7, 8 years later, since I first started in the classroom, being able to get Facebook messages or text messages or emails from parents and, former students that say, thank you, Mr. Garvin, for what you did for my son. Or thank you, Mr. Garvin, for that kind of impact that you had in my life. Or Mr. Garvin, can I use you as a reference on my, job application or my college application? These kids were in 6th grade. And now they're, all of them have pretty much graduated. And so, being able to have that kind of impact certainly makes me feel good. It makes me feel like my time there was not in vain.